So you want to learn a little bit more about the bucket system? Well, let's dive in and go over the basics. The very first thing you need to know, the bucket system is a tool that analyzes past performances to let us know which stats are important to build our lineups around. And at the very least, it lets us know how many golfers from those stats we want in our lineup. And the stats that I look at are last year finishing positions, last week finishing positions, course history, recent form, salaries, and strokes gained. Now, there are 6 buckets within each of these stat categories, meaning there are 36 total buckets in the bucket system. Each of the buckets within these stat categories are identified by a particular range. For the first 4 buckets that I listed off, the last year, last week, course history, and recent form, they're all going to follow the same criteria. Bucket 1 will always be that 1 to 20 range. 2 will be that 20 to 40. 3 will be 40 to 60. 4 will be 60 to 80. 5 will be 80 plus. 80 plus just means the golfer started the event and did not finish all 4 rounds. They could have withdrawn at any moment during the event, could have missed the cut, and they could have disqualified themselves somehow. They would all fall under that bucket. And then bucket 6 are did not plays. So like I said, this applies for all the first 4 buckets I talked about. Last year, last week, course history, and recent form. Salaries and strokes gains are a little bit different. Salary is kind of self-explanatory. To create 6 buckets, I just divided them basically by their salary ranges. So you got 10K, 9K, 8K, 7K, and then 2 6K ranges. For strokes gain stats, I do strokes gain stats a little bit different than most. A lot of people like to revolve around their analysis or their strategies from strokes gained approach. I drive all mine by off the tee and putting. Off the tee is going to drive approach stats. The worse you are off the tee and you still have good finishing positions means you probably are better at approach. A lot of it still drives from your finishing place. Strokes gain stats are baked into your finishing positions, believe it or not. So either way, my strokes gain are derived by off the tee and putting. So strokes gain 1, all stats are positive. That is off the tee, approach, around the green, and putting. The next 4 stats can have whatever stat in between, like approach and around the green. Those either need to be negative, at least for strokes gain 2, one of them needs to be negative. For strokes gain 3, 4, and 5, it's not a big deal. Like, it could be any stat because those are more driven by off the tee and putting. But strokes gain 2, positive off the tee, positive putting. Obviously, if it was positive in between for both those stats, that would then just be in the strokes gain 1. So basically, any golfer not in strokes gain 1 with positive off the tee and positive putting is going to be in strokes gain 2. Easier, it's an easy way to say it too. And then, like I said, everything is driven by off the tee and putting, so you can see the pluses and the minuses to determine strokes gain 3 through 5. And then strokes gain 6 are no strokes gain stats. So those would conclude all the buckets. Now, why is this important to you? Actually, hold on. Let me go backwards. I need to identify course history and recent form for you guys so you have a better understanding if you're going to do your own research. All of these stats are all captured prior to the start of an event. So if I go to 2015, you're going to see course history. Now, this course history is from 2014 and 2013. Because if I go to my course history tab, all of my data for every event goes back to 2013. I just think you need at least 2 events from an event, or you need 2 years from an event to create course history. So in 2015, I stamp what their course history was prior to the start of the event. So I'm not looking at their current course history. I'm looking at what it was in 2015 dating back to 2013. And I do that for each event going forward. So in 2016, their course history would be from 2015, 2014, and 2013. If I go back to 2014, you're going to see there's no course history. And these pages that I'm showing you all drive those specific stats because they all get captured in this bucket page that I have. So you can see I have all of my last year, last week buckets on top of each other. Top 5s, top 10s, top 20s, cuts made, the totals, and then the optimal lineups. I'm capturing all of that data. And like I said, it's all of the data leading into the tournament. So it's very static. It's not dynamic. Recent form, on the other hand, so if I go back to the summary and we're looking at recent form stats, just like on these pages, like I was just showing you, if I go back to 2015, I'm only looking at the 7 weeks prior to that event. So you can see the match play. I don't include that in recent form, by the way. I won't include match play, is too difficult, so that will never be included. But since that was the week before, I'm still including it in the recent form tab. But we're looking at the Zurich, the RBC Heritage, the Masters, the Houston Open, Valero Texas Open, and the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Those 6 events plus the match play, that makes 7. That's included into the recent form. So, and if I were to highlight over the recent form, go in here and scroll down, you can see, you probably slightly see on the screen what cells it's looking at for the average, and it's column G through 11. Again, not looking at match play, it's too difficult. I don't want to include it. But that was what was captured in 2015 to make up the recent form stats. So if I were to go to the bucket page in this recent form, just inside the top 10, we have 2 guys that had a 1 to 20 range for their recent form average. So if I go to the buckets and we go to 2015 for top 10s, go to the recent form, you can see that's right here. 2015, there were 2, right here. So you can see I just tally everything up right here. Gives me a min max, it gives me a success percentage, a frequency percentage, all that good stuff to let me know for this event which stats matter. And that's exactly what the bucket system tells me, especially when it comes to the summary page. Now, to go back to what I was saying, why does this matter for you guys? Why should you even look at this? Well, I figured out a way to look at that historical data and apply it to the current field. Whatever the event I'm talking about, I'm able to apply it based off of how many golfers are in that bucket and the quality of golfer that's also in that bucket. So if we're looking at the 2022 Players Championship, because I have not yet updated this the buckets to include the 2022 data, you can see there were 17 golfers in that bucket. Now, on average, there's 17. So that kind of just checks that box. That just by based off numbers, the likelihood of this bucket hitting like it has in the past, pretty good. But then I also look at strength of field now, which maybe in the future I'll also apply my own personal rankings to this. But strength of field is still a pretty good number to use. This is their official World Golf ranking, as well as their FedEx Cup ranking from the year before. That's how the OWGR does their strength of field. And whether or not it's a home event, which this would be a home event. So you can see what that makes up for the total strength of field. That doesn't matter. I'm just really looking at these 2 numbers, the success rate, and then applying it to the projections. And then I create projections. So this is where it all kind of ties into what I capture historically and what I apply to this current field gives me projections to allow you to know which golfers you should really be focusing on putting in your player pool. And what I mean by that is this last year, bucket 1 had 17 golfers in it, but I'm only telling you, you only want to select 1 to 3 golfers from it. And I do this for every single bucket, by the way. Every single bucket, I'm telling you, you only want X amount of golfers from there, a range, X to Y. And then if you were to apply that to your player pool, and we can take a look at 2022 and look at the, the positions or the finishing placements. Let's just clear out everybody but the top 10 from the 2022 Players Championship and take a look at the last year finishing place. So Cameron Smith's your winner. He's your 2022 winner. In 2021, he finished in 17th place. So if we go back to the buckets, he falls under this range. And again, I'm telling you, you want somewhere between 1 to 3 golfers from this bucket in your lineup. So we go back here. Well, can we find a second one or a third one? We sure enough can. Paul Casey. Those are the only last year 1 golfers to be inside the top 10. And they so happen to be also in the optimal lineup. So we go back here and we look at our projection. 1 to 3 is what I told you to select from. It ended up being successful. Now I can open this up to everybody in the field and just take a look at last year 1s. Just look at last year 1s and sort by salary top to bottom. You're going to see, you know, some of your top guys didn't do that well. Cameron Smith obviously won. Daniel Berger finished 13th, and so did Shane Lowry. So I told you wanted somewhere between 1 to 3. These guys were really close to finishing inside the top 10. They're not going to hurt you putting them on your team. Imagine you only selected 3 of these. You know, still going to have a really good shot to win a GPP. You might not hit the optimal, or you're not going to hit the optimal lineup, but either way, if you don't hit the optimal lineup, let's try to hit the GPP instead. Like, that's just the simple thing to say. So the projections work out. Now I track the success rate of the bucket system. This week for the Players Championship, I had 3 buckets that did not hit. 3 out of 36 buckets were successfully projected. Only 3 missed. The week after this, I think at the match play, I had 1 bucket that missed. Actually, I don't remember which one came after this one. Valspar, I think. 1 bucket missed. Match play, 1 bucket missed. For the season, not so much the season, for 1 full year, the bucket system is hitting at a 94% success rate when projecting the amount of golfers are going to finish inside the top 10 for each bucket. I've never had more than 3 buckets miss. So I'm always hitting around 33 buckets, which is pretty darn good. Imagine like knowing you only want 1 to 3 golfers out of 17. Or if I come down to this last year 5 bucket, there's 61 golfers in there. Guess what? Don't choose more than 4. We can go validate that right now. Last year bucket 5s. So we look at the 5s. 3 guys were in the optimal lineup. 4 guys finished inside the top 10. So what was my projection? 2 to 4. We always round down with the minimum projection, and we always round up with the maximum. So we hit. It was absolutely perfect. 3 guys were in the optimal lineup. 4 guys finished inside the top 10. That was successful. I do this for every single bucket. And the beautiful part of this now is I apply this to an optimizer. I provide an optimizer. So if you're watching one of my preview videos or strategy videos, I usually mention this in the giveaway portion. Hey, if you want the optimizer, all you gotta do is be subscribed and then comment down on that video and email me at sweetspotdfs@gmail.com and say, hey, I want to use that optimizer. That optimizer has all of the bucket conditionals already in place. And all you gotta do is hit run optimize. And that will provide an optimal lineup based off the bucket projections and based off of whatever rankings that you have in there, metric, whatever you want to put in there. I'll load it with whatever I have. You can obviously change that stuff. I have a whole video on that as well. So if you're interested in the bucket system, I would highly, highly, highly suggest you guys to try to get the optimizer for any week that you are playing DFS. Because again, the bucket system is about 94% correct every single week. You should use that to your advantage. And I think that's all that I have when it comes to looking at the bucket system. It's all based off these projections. If you watch that older bucket system video, you could probably just throw that away because there's a lot of things that don't apply anymore. One thing, I didn't have salary buckets, nor did I have strokes gained buckets in that video. We only talked about last year, last week, course history, and recent form. So obviously I added 2, which for you guys should mean, or it should mean to you guys that I'm constantly trying to better this system, try to make it more accurate, try to add buckets that, you know, are meaningful, that matter. Maybe in the future, I'll take some of these buckets away. I don't know yet. But currently, as it sits, 6 buckets, or 6 stat categories with 6 buckets in them. Those 36 buckets being 94% successful. I like where it's at right now. And I might tweak how the projections are done. But so far, again, projections are pretty darn good. I guess the other thing to add with just the old bucket system to the new one, I had the rankings, which is just, again, it's an identifier. I had these rankings set based off of the frequencies, and now it's just all based off of whatever the range is. I think this is easier. It's easier for you guys to understand. It's easier for me to put into a database and apply it to a website that I eventually will have available to you guys, so you guys can cross-reference and determine, you know, which of these buckets really truly matter. And that's the other thing to add. I forgot to mention this. These rankings, the bucket numbers, they're all applied to the golfer. So if I went back to 2022, hopefully you understood that. Each of these golfers are given a certain number based off of their stat within that stat category. So you can see a lot of these guys right here. I hope that was kind of self-evident, or you could figure that one out. Yeah, each golfer is going to have a whole different stat profile based off of the buckets that they fall under. And I haven't yet figured it out, but I will try to put bucket combinations together. So you can see, you know, like a Kevin Kisner having a last year 5 and a last week 5. Is that a successful stat you should be looking at? Hopefully I'll be able to provide something like that in the future. I used to when I was just only looking at last year and last week stats, but once I incorporate course history and recent form, it was difficult to do that. But anyways, that is all that I have. I don't have anything else to add. Like I said, I am constantly trying to improve this, trying to make it better. But for the most part, I absolutely enjoy making lineups this way. It limits the amount of lineups you can create. And to some, that might seem like torture. But to me, it's absolutely freeing to be able to know you can only build so many lineups. The likelihood of hitting the optimal lineup just increases the less amount of lineups you can create that follow specific rules. Just my opinion, if you were given, you know, thousands and thousands and thousands of more different lineup combinations, how do you pick the right one? To me, that sounds like torture. When you have more freedom, well, that sounds like a political thing that I don't care to get into. But when it comes to building lineups, when you have more freedom, it just, the analysis or the paralysis to me, I should say, seems like that'll creep in more, trying to figure out which lineup's best. And I would much rather just let the optimizer take a look at the players that I like and build golfers around them. So anyways, that's all I have for you guys. So thank you for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, bye.